Yo, dude! So totally welcome to Skully Reviews, man, and today we're gonna... Okay, I'm not gonna do that the entire review, but nevertheless, for the next 2 months, I'm feeling in a pre-90s mood right now, so with all that in mind, I have just one thing to say. Welcome to Season 3 of Skully Reviews, and in turn, welcome to the Summer of Sonic Marathon in 2017. So, for all of you who are excited, let's just kick back, grab a Pepsi, and enjoy the Sonic Marathon as it unfolds for the next few months. '17's gonna be a good year.
The year is 1990, a new decade for Sega of Japan to create a new mascot for their new console, the Sega Mega Drive. Sure, Alex Kidd is nice for the first date, but nice guys finish last, right ladies? What Sega needs is someone fast, cool, somebody who embodies the extreme spirit that will give Sega the edge that it needs to kick the ass of Nintendo and all their Nintendo dorks.
Yeah, that's right, I said it. You just can't handle my totally radical 90s insults, dude.
Okay, being serious for a moment, Sonic the Hedgehog was created to promote the Sega Mega Drive and had gone through many concepts during its development, one of which actually being that Sonic was in a rock band.
Totally would have loved to have seen the Sonic series if it turned out like that today.
Anyway, the concept of Sonic soon revolved around speed-based platforming, and it was here that the newly formed Sonic team began to work on what would eventually become the killer app of the Sega Mega Drive. And so in July of 1991, Sonic the Hedgehog took the world by storm, igniting the Sega vs Nintendo rivalry, which in my headcanon Sega had won, and made Nintendo their Nintendo bitch, because in my headcanon it's still the 90s and the war is still going on.
Shut up, how dare you ruin my fantasy!
So spin dashing right into the plot, allow me to dramatize the Japanese manual, as this is meant to be the canon storyline rather than the American manual, so forgive me if I don't refer to concepts like Mobius or Dr. Robotnik in this review. The evil mad scientist Dr. Eggman is up to his old tricks again. Sonic, that annoying impertinent hedgehog. Thanks to him my great plans are always laid to waste. Oh, but this time, I'm going to rub him out with the power of science! Ha 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 ha! South Island is a treasure trove of gems and ancient ruins. They say that it's the island where the mystical Chaos Emeralds lie. The Chaos Emeralds are a super material that give energy to all living beings. Also, when applied to scientific purposes, they can be used for nuclear and laser-based technology. However, nobody knows exactly how to get a hold of these emeralds. At the same time though, they do say that the reason why South Island is always moving is because the emeralds are somewhere inside the island's hazy depths. But one day, crisis visited upon the island, and who showed up with it but Dr. Eggman and his cronies. I'll find those emeralds, even if I have to dig up the whole island just to do it! Dr. Eggman had set up a fort in one corner of the island, and went about carrying out his plans. Eggman, you still haven't had enough? Sonic had hurried as soon as he heard the news. Dr. Eggman, it seemed like he never left him alone, even though Sonic had beaten him every time so far. It sounded like Dr. Eggman considered Sonic his sworn enemy, but he was never any match for Sonic. However, this time, something is amiss. Have you seen it, Sonic? This time is going to be different! Because this time, I've turned all the animals on the island into robots. Everybody? All of them go in accordance to my plan, my orders. In other words, Sonic, everyone on the island is your enemy! Gyahahaha, cough, ack, ahem. This time, the world really will all mine. This is terrible. Hurry, Sonic the Hedgehog. Everyone is waiting for your help. Again, I'm not really going to criticize the story for being so basic since this was 1991 after all, and it was made at a time when video games could get away with basic stories like this written on the back of an onion sandwich. It serves as a means of giving us a reason to play the game, so...
Besides, who plays a Sonic game for the story? You'd have to be a real dumbass to care about that, am I right?
Facetiousness aside, the gameplay of Sonic the Hedgehog is the main drawing point of the game.
Oh, and I should bring up that the version of the game that I'm reviewing is on the Ultimate Mega Drive collection, so unfortunate as it is to say, I do not own a Sega Mega Drive or a copy of Sonic 1 on the Mega Drive, so the illusion that I'm currently in 1991 is somewhat lost.
You control the blue blur by using the D-pad, to which Sonic can run at a relatively quick pace after building up enough speed. While running, you can also hold down the D-pad to have Sonic roll into a ball where he can carve through enemies using his spines, or by pressing the X button to jump to get a similar effect. One of the biggest parts of Sonic the Hedgehog is gaining speed through the use of inclines. As a result, this is where much of Sonic the Hedgehog's speed is going to be up to your ability to use the rolling ball form to your advantage. However, this also puts the game at a disadvantage for reasons that I'll state after this little disclaimer.
And I know I'm gonna get flack for this, but coming from the perspective of a guy who didn't grow up playing this game in the 90s, I played it many years later, and suffice it to say, I'm not going to be on the same level as many diehard Sonic fans who played it in 1991, but nevertheless, my views on this style of gameplay still stands.
While the thrill of speedrunning Green Hill Zone makes for a great introduction into the world of Sonic the Hedgehog, that speed and pace is almost immediately halted by Marble Zone with its slow-moving blocks and heavy emphasis on precision platforming.
Now, speaking from the perspective of somebody who attempted to introduce others to classic Sonic games, how many times have you had the experience where newcomers enjoyed running through Green Hill Zone, but immediately stopped after Act 1 of Marble Zone? Be honest.
Yes, I know what I'm saying is probably blasphemy to a lot of Sonic fans here, but let me be clear. Although Sonic's method of gaining speed is a pretty clever idea of having players use their momentum to their advantage, the level design in many areas of Sonic 1 doesn't really reflect the supposed speed gameplay that it likes to boast itself on. While Green Hill Zone, as I mentioned earlier, is filled to the brim with hills and inclines in which to roll down to gain bursts of speed, the pacing of that level is what many define as the first Sonic game, and it's that very level that people bring up time and time again as the de facto level aesthetic in game design, and, you know, the general feel of Sonic the Hedgehog.
And so, did you ever wonder why the rest of Sonic the Hedgehog was never really brought up? Allow me to explain.
If I can paraphrase here, here's the Sonic levels in terms of those of which the fans find fun. Green Hill Zone, Starlight Zone,
Green Hill Zone?
Yeah, that's why. Now, granted, maybe I'm being a little too negative, but I really feel as though many, despite claiming games like Sonic Adventure 2 to have aged poorly, personally, I think the same thing can be applied to Sonic 1 in terms of basic level design. And I'm not too harsh on Sonic Team considering that this was the first attempt at creating a speed-based platformer, but when you strip away the internal logic of it all, newcomers aren't going to easily adjust to the jarring change from the speed-based Green Hill Zone to the slow-paced Marble Zone in an instant. However, on the off chance that they do stick with it, the speed does pick up again a little bit with Spring Yard Zone, which I will say is my favourite level in Sonic 1, due to the level design trying to balance out the speed-based platforming and precision platforming a little bit better than the previous level, which to me does act as an incentive to keep playing.
So naturally, with Spring Yard Zone being a much needed refresher, just like this can of Pepsi, surely Labyrinth Zone will be the much needed refresher that we need to keep up the pace, right?
Yeah, not even classic fans can defend Labyrinth Zone because the level design completely negates speed, and if any newcomers were sticking with Sonic 1 up until this point, then suffice it to say they certainly wouldn't be sticking with it now. This level's biggest crime is that it drags. It drags on for far too long, and as a result, the game is abruptly halted to the point of absurdity.
I mean, how well do you think Sonic the Hedgehog would have done if it was advertised like this?
Sonic the Hedgehog. Speed. Action. And slow-paced platforming! Extreme! Anyway, if you do somehow solve the Labyrinth Zone, you're then treated to Starlight Zone, which, hey, it's actually a bearable zone that actually does rely on the speed-based platforming physics of Green Hill Zone, so yay? But then after that, you're immediately treated to Scrap Brain Zone, which, if you're not ready for it, it will kick your ass. After many lives lost, you eventually make it to the final confrontation with Dr. Eggman in the final zone, where you have no rings and are forced to dodge lasers and crushing pillars in what I must admit is actually a pretty cool final boss fight. It's tense, the stakes are high, and it's a very much a do-or-die situation, which really makes you feel as if you've mastered the game once you've beaten it. And so, with South Island saved from the tyranny of Dr. Eggman and his robots destroyed, freeing the trapped animals inside, Sonic runs across Green Hill Zone and leaps in the air in celebration.
Hey, but what about the Chaos Emeralds?
The what?
Oh, right. Yes, one of the big items to collect in Sonic 1 are the Chaos Emeralds. 7 mystical gems that when combined are said to create great power.
Sounds cool, doesn't it?
Well, instead of 7 Chaos Emeralds there are 6, and by collecting 50 rings in a level and jumping into a giant ring at the end of the stage, you are entered into a special stage which looks like they should be accompanied with Inagata Devita. But by completing it, this earns Sonic a Chaos Emerald.
And do you want to know what your reward for collecting all the Chaos Emeralds is?
Absolutely nothing!
Well, I say that, but unless of course flowers and bragging rights are worth it, then quite frankly I'd say it's not really worth your time to collect the Chaos Emeralds. In terms of mission structure, the game is an A to B platformer, separated into 3 acts in which Sonic must complete, and at the end of the 3rd act, Sonic must always fight against Dr. Eggman with one of his mechanical contraptions. Such devices include the famous ball and chain, the flame dripper, the impaler, running away like a bitch, seesaw galore, and finally, the piston punisher.
Of course, in the actual game itself, the bosses are just generically named Marble Zone Boss or Labyrinth Zone Boss, but you know what, man? That is just too lame-stainerific, so I took the liberty to 90s it up, and as a result, I think my names are by far so totally radical by default.
But jokes aside, let's move on to the technical aspects. Graphically, Sonic the Hedgehog looks quite decent for a Mega Drive title, and aesthetically, it manages to blend the fantasy-looking Green Hill Zone with a lot more Earth-based areas like caves, temples, and even the urban cities seen in Spring Yard Zone and Starlight Zone, which make for a nice contrast between levels. And one such little detail that I will praise about Sonic the Hedgehog is its use of parallax scrolling as you ascend through the level and progress across it, which to me is a nice little detail, especially in Spring Yard Zone. The soundtrack composed by Masato Nakamura is to what many Sonic fans see as iconic, and often seen as one of the best the series has to offer. I mean, hell, what Sonic fan can't recall the theme of... Unfortunately, I'm not most Sonic fans, so allow me to be forward with my thoughts and say that I honestly can't say the same for the rest of the soundtrack. I'm gonna be completely honest here, outside of the main theme, Spring Yard Zone, and the final zone, I really don't like a lot of the music in Sonic 1. Not to say that the composition is necessarily bad, but even the supposedly good music like Green Hill Zone to me just comes off as kind of unmemorable. Maybe it's because I never grew up with these games as a kid, but honestly, from somebody of my musical tastes, this music really doesn't do much for me on a personal level.
And I know a lot of Sonic fans are going to consider this blasphemy since Sonic 1 is considered as one of the good ones that started it all. But honestly, as far as the music is concerned, a lot of the tracks I don't really find that good because the rest to me is either passable or just grating to listen to.
Namely, Green Hill and Labyrinth Zone.
And with that said, what are my totally radical 90s rodacular thoughts on Sonic the Hedgehog?
Honestly, this review probably came off as a bit more negative than I intended to, but hear me out here. I don't think Sonic the Hedgehog 1 is a bad game necessarily, just one that I think aged horribly. I'm willing to cut Sonic 1 a lot of slack considering that it was the beginning of the series, well, for better or for worse, and even despite all my criticisms, I would easily go back to Sonic 1 more than I ever would some other games in the series, but nevertheless, I do still have a point to make about this. Sonic 1, I feel, only ever got a free pass by fans purely because of its significance as the first game in the series, and by the nostalgia held by kids who played it in the 90s, now full-grown adults.
But what I think classic Sonic fans need to understand is that not everybody played this in 1991. Not everybody is going to have the same kind of nostalgia for it, which allows you to turn your brain off to some of its archaic designs, and usually I can look past a game's age and judge it by the standards of the time, but in the case of Sonic 1, I'm more inclined to criticize it because a lot of its more boneheaded decisions in the gameplay department just take up so much of the game.
And for me, my main criticism stems from the slow-paced level design, which to me completely negates the thing that this series was meant to be promoting: speed. Don't get it twisted, I'm not asking for Sonic Rush here, but what I'm at least hoping for is a nice balance between speed and platforming, and in my opinion, the original Sonic the Hedgehog just doesn't do that very well outside of Green Hill Zone and Starlight Zone.
But don't get it twisted, even despite our negative start here, the Sonic series would soon learn from this, and Sonic Team would go on to make things better. And so on that note, I am Skully, keep it new metal, And I'll catch you next time in the Sonic Marathon with Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for the Sega Mega Drive. 90s it out! The shirt doesn't fit me anymore.